Hello! How are y'all doing? Welcome to another edition of Happy Hour. I'm streaming to you live from the Cool Fish Bar here in Cornelius, North Carolina. My name is Bob Peters. Welcome back, or welcome. Today we have a ton of really fun stuff for you, and we're doing something a little odd. But first, a little housekeeping. First of all, thank you to Cool Fish for allowing me to do such a fun project. This is really amazing. I love showing off some North Carolina spirits. I love showing off the diversity of what cocktail culture here in and around Charlotte is like, and I'm very thankful for being here. So again, thank you, Cool Fish. Next, I want to make sure that everybody is following Cool Fish on Instagram. That's Cool Fish LKN. So on Instagram, go on there, hit that follow button, and it is Cool Fish LKN. We are very happy to take suggestions, comments, anything that you guys got. Please type it out, and it'll come in this little box below us, and we will answer it as soon as I can. I got Alex behind the camera, and we are going live right now. But if you happen to catch this on a recorded basis, still feel free to type in any questions or comments, and we'll get back to you with that stuff as soon as we possibly can, sometimes within a couple minutes. I know, weird, right? It's like we need to figure out something else to do. All right, so I think that's it. Alex, am I forgetting anything before we get started? Nope. Okay. So I had a really tough time coming up with some ideas for today's episode of Happy Hour. So started flipping through some books, some old recipe books that I had, and things weren't exactly striking me. No inspiration was there until I picked up this one book, and it's a reprint of an ancient cocktail book. This is really neat. If you guys don't have it, this is Harry Johnson's reprint, the New and Improved Bartender's Manual from 1882. And I can't remember if I got this off of Amazon or where I got it, but I'm sure it's not too crazy hard to find. The stuff in here is pretty amazing, and it'll show you exactly, like if you start reading it and reading the cocktail descriptions, you can really see how far things have come, and just how incredible like some of these recipes still are. And you'll recognize something sometimes, and you'll be like, oh my God, that's whatever, you know. Like the other day when we were talking about daiquiris, I said basically a daiquiri is a rum sour. Well, I found a rum sour in here, and it's called the Medford Rum Sour. Now, Medford was a rum that was, I guess, in rotation back in 1882, but I'm going to substitute that for something that we have here, something that we love, which is Queen Charlotte's Reserve Rum, which is Muddy Rivers right in Belmont, North Carolina, and we love those guys, and so we're going to make our rum sour with that. But there's, as you're flipping through here, and I've got a couple other things in here that you guys, some of it you'll recognize, and some of it is not very familiar, so I found a couple of interesting ones, but like just the language in here is really interesting. How they do things, like instead of them doing simple syrup like we do simple syrup or getting sugar into the cocktail, they add straight sugar and then like a splash of soda water or water and then stir that. So basically they're making simple syrup per cocktail, which I think is really interesting that somebody back then just didn't go, well, we're using this in almost every cocktail, why don't we go ahead and do it ahead of time and we'll just add that to it. But, you know, I'm sure that was a big aha moment when simple syrup started coming into play. Another funny thing that you'll notice as you're flipping through here is the way that they do measurements. So just the classifications or the way that they measure things is way different. So they don't do things by ounce or by milliliter in here. They have these really weird units of measurement like wine glasses. And ponies, and well, dash isn't really that weird, but those are some of the weird ones. And there's a lot of ingredients that you will recognize in here, like absinthe and raspberry syrup, different things like that. Lots of brandy, lots of whiskey, things like that nature. There's some gin in here, of course, but you don't see a ton of vodka, okay? Because vodka back then was all just in Russia, and it hadn't made its way over that much yet in 1882. That was something that came to the States a little bit later, so I think that's super interesting. Anyway, let's go ahead and let's get busy. Let's make some stuff out of Harry Johnson's 1882 new and improved bartender's manual. I know, cool, right? Okay, so the first one we're gonna make is the Medford Rum Sour, okay? So this one, super simple. We're gonna load this up in a glass. If you would prefer to put this in a coupe glass or a martini glass, kind of like a daiquiri, this is kind of what we're making anyway, but this is basically a lemon daiquiri instead of lime. So let's take our shaker, put a nice scoop of ice in there, and we are going to use 2 ounces of our Queen Charlotte's Reserve Rum out of Belmont, North Carolina. Again, Muddy Rivers Distillery, all their stuff is amazing. And then I'm going to use a little bit of lemon juice and fresh squeeze, if you could possibly manage it, is definitely the way to go. We're going to use about ½ ounce of our fresh squeezed or fresh pressed lemon juice. And then we also, instead of us using sugar and then soda water to make it dissolve all the way, we're going to use some pre-made simple syrup. And I'm going to go with like 3/4 of an ounce of that. I have never made this recipe before, and another one of the 3 recipes that we're going to do today I haven't made either. So we're going to test them, and I'm going to do this for the first time with you guys because I think that's kind of more fun that way. Okay, so I've got some Muddy River Queen Charlotte's Reserve Rum in here, ½ ounce of lemon juice, and 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup. That's kind of it to the Medford Sour. There's not a whole lot to it, but that's pretty cool too. Give it a good shake. All right, and let's give it a taste before we pour it, so that way if we have to make any adjustments, it won't be a problem, okay? So I'm just gonna dip my straw in here and get a straw full. Man, that's good. You know what that reminds me of? That's really good. But it has very similar notes to, and it makes sense. It reminds me of a sidecar. And a sidecar is cognac or brandy, whatever you want to call it, and then some Cointreau, some lemon juice, and then maybe some simple syrup. And then, so we almost got the same ingredients in here, but this is with a nice dark rum. So again, it's very similar, but it turned out delicious. And how easy is that? So rum sour, right? Okay, so we've got our Hawthorne strainer on here already, and then as I tell you guys over and over, a little tea strainer or a cocoa strainer or whatever you want to call it, it's like a cone mesh strainer, is going to act as a second catch. So this is called double straining. Look how that worked out. That's pretty, it's pretty lucky. Occasionally, it's almost like I know what I'm doing. Occasionally, not all the time. All right, so the last thing to do would just be to garnish. I think it would just be true to this to get a lemon wheel on there. So let's take a fresh lemon, and I'm just simply gonna do a wheel on here. Nice, relatively thick cut, and then we'll cut a little slit in the bottom and then hang that on the side of the glass. And then that's it, right? Super, super, super simple. That is basically a modern day version of Harry Johnson's 1882 Medford Sour. But again, we use Queen Charlotte's Reserve Rum. Alex is ready. Alex is ready. He's over here like this. Oh, come on. You got to try this. This is amazing. You want to try this, brother? Come on over. Get in there. We love it. Yep. Get in there. Super simple, Really delicious. It works incredibly well with that really nice Queen Charlotte's dark rum. And again, like there's definitely, it has the same vibrations as a sidecar, which is another simple yet delicious uber classic cocktail.
I just can't order a cocktail anywhere that uses some kind of pre-made sour mix anymore. I mean, the fresh.
It's tough.
The only way to do it.
It's really, really tough when you know how good. So, okay, so fresh fruit juice, like I preach that all the time, right? But it's a double-edged sword, right? So once you know how good it can taste when it's fresh and when it's real juice, when the person behind the bar actually takes the time and the care and the love to squeeze it, to squeeze that juice and, you know, make that just that tiny bit more extra effort to make your cocktail taste better. Like, it makes all the difference in the world. And so the double-edged sword is that it's great because you get to have it that way and it's really beautiful and delicious. But the bad part is then now everything else sort of pales in comparison. So there's your double-edged sword, and how good fresh juice can be and then how bad it is too. Yeah, you guys get in there, finish up. All right, so that's the Medford Sour, right? Like one of the super, super easy. And you guys can play with that recipe. That's a great thing to play with. If you have an herb simple syrup, if you wanted to put some mint in there, if you wanted to put whatever you have in the kitchen in the refrigerator, then you can add stuff to that very, very easily and start manipulating that very basic recipe for that rum sour and then changing it and making it into something that's really spectacular, delicious, and something that you create yourself in home, okay? All right, so any questions about the Medford Sour? Any questions or comments? Again, we love recommendations or suggestions for classes that we can do in the future. If you guys have anything that you're interested in or any particular questions, please feel free to shoot them over this way. Type them out, pop them in the comments section below, and we will get to them as soon as we can, okay? All right, so next I wanted to do something that also is pretty familiar, that everybody has heard of, and it's one of my favorite all-time cocktails. It's just as simple as the last one we did, the famous and incomparable mint julep. Yep, that's right, the mint julep. There almost is nothing finer than a mint julep. There's almost nothing more southern than a mint julep. And it's about as easy as it can get. So let me show you guys how easy this is, all right? Okay, so we're gonna take our glass and put it off to the side. I'm gonna chill this, but we're gonna do something fun here in a second too. So I'm gonna let that glass sort of start chilling right there. And we are going to create this in our shaker. And so I've got some really nice fresh mint here. And what I'm going to do with the fresh mint, of course, is just pick some nice big pieces. I'm going to get about 2 handfuls of this mint. So I'm just going to take a nice sprig, tear it in half, drop both the stem and the sprig, the top half, the top of it in there. 2, let's see, what's that? 3 of them in there. Let's put 4 in there. Why not? Nobody ever goes, this is too minty. Nobody says that. It's not something you hear a lot. I like this mint drink, but it's too much mint. All right, so we've got 4 sprigs in there. And what we're going to do is we are going to muddle that up very nicely with our muddler. If you guys don't have a fancy muddler at home, you can definitely use a wooden spoon, or sometimes you can use like a Tabasco bottle, or if you have a bottle of bitters laying around, just wash the bottom of it off so that you don't have anything funky in your drink. But if not, you just want to give it a nice smash in there. You want to make sure that you sort of beat that up really well without necessarily grinding it or totally trashing all of it. We're basically just trying to break down sort of the cell membranes in these leaves and in these stems in order for this to release the oil from the mint. Wow, that smells like summer when you're a kid, right? What do we always say?
Like mowing grass.
Like mowing grass.
We have a mint patch.
It's a very, very, very memorable smell. It immediately transports you to wherever your fondest or least fond memory of mint is. But I can't wait for the day, I'm going to say it again, when Smell-O-Vision comes out, because, God, that's amazing. It smells like Wrigley's gum, but fresh. God, that's good. Okay. All right, so we've got our mint in there. That's all ready to go. So now let's add some bourbon. Put a little scoop of ice in our shaker. And let's do 2 ounces of our 1792 small batch. I love using this for cocktails because it's not too terribly expensive. It's about $25, give or take. That to me is a great bourbon. If you want to sip on it, you can just sip on it if it's been a tough day. If you want to mix it in cocktails, you can mix it in cocktails too. And so anytime you can find a bourbon that is really good in cocktails, it still stands up, it's got some nice strong shoulders to it, or something that you can sip on while still being smooth enough to enjoy just by itself, you've got something really delicious there. So that to me is one of my go-tos, and I always try to keep some of that around no matter what in my house. It's definitely the price is right to sip it if you're going to have a drink or two every day. So anyway, small batch 1792, one of my favorites. 2 ounces of that, and let's do 1 ounce of our simple syrup. And if you guys remember, occasionally I'll mention this, but since simple syrup is such a vital part to this one cocktail, the mint julep, I'll tell you again, I do my simple syrup just a little bit differently. I do, instead of a regular simple syrup like everybody in the whole world makes, 1 part sugar, 1 part water simple syrup, I do 2 parts water, 1 part sugar. Now that just cuts the sweetness down in half. Or it dilutes it more, however you want to look at it. But that allows you sort of a bigger target to hit, right? So if you're trying to find that perfect balance of sweetness, like throwing darts at a dartboard, it kind of makes a bullseye a little bit bigger because you have twice as much room to work with. Well, at least that's how it works in my head. So at any rate, I use 2 parts water, 1 part sugar for my simple syrup. If you have a one-to-one, just make sure that you're just putting in a little bit at a time until you find your perfect level of sweetness. You might only need a 1/2 ounce if you're using a 1-to-1 simple, okay? All right, so I got my 2 ounces of small batch in here. I've got my muddled mint. I've got my ounce of 2-to-1 simple syrup. That's it. So simple, right? So we're gonna give this a really good shake because there's so few ingredients in there. So we want everything to really play well together, mix those flavors, and we also are looking for some good dilution. Okay, that's good. We'll try that. See how that went. Let me rinse out my tin. If you're making a bunch of different cocktails and you do have sort of a mint julep that you're making for people, pro tip is to rinse out your tins in between cocktails because you'll have little pieces of mint that are stuck inside of your tin. And that way you don't put mint in somebody's drink that doesn't want it. Man, that is easy breezy. Okay, so that is done and that tastes good. That's about the right amount of simple syrup for me. Now, if you guys like things a little bit less sweet than I do, then you might want to start off with a 1/2 ounce of that simple syrup. And then if it needs to be a little bit sweeter, just put like a 1/4 ounce of it in at a time. Give it another shake, 1/4 ounce at a time, give it another shake. If you like things more sweet, then put more simple syrup in there. It's really about how you are going to enjoy this, because it doesn't matter how I drink my drink. What matters is that you enjoy yours. Fair? Okay. All right, so here's where it gets kind of fun. I'm going to put this off to the side for a second because we are going to do something super interesting, and definitely this is like a very, very old, really fun technique. So I brought this. This is called a Lewis bag, okay? It's basically a canvas sack. That's it. There's nothing crazy to it. But back in the old days, they didn't have any fancy machines for making crushed ice. And we at Cool Fish, we don't have one here either. So I thought this would be a great idea for our 1882 cocktail recipe book to actually pull a technique that you would see at every bar in 1882. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put a couple scoops of ice in our Lewis bag. I've got 3 scoops. Let's do one more, just to make sure. 4 scoops of ice in there. And this will make more than enough for one cocktail. Okay, you see how I'm just sort of going to put that on the bar and make sure I've got plenty of space here, because I brought my wooden mallet. And this is how they used to make crushed ice. Kind of makes sense, right? Now, this Lewis bag you can get on Amazon. You can get some of these. I'm sure you can find them on different websites. Cocktail Kingdom, I got this one at Cocktail Kingdom, and they're like, I don't know, 10 or 15 bucks or something, and they last for a long time, so long as you take care of them. You just don't want to do anything too crazy, and you can do this with different ways at home. Like a Ziploc bag, kind of, that one can make a mess pretty quick if you're not paying attention. And the neat thing about a Lewis bag is, since it's canvas, when you do that, it's soaking up all the condensation and like all the ice. So the ice, when it comes out, not only is it broken up, it's also kind of dry, which is great. Doesn't dilute your cocktail too crazy much. All right, so now my glass is chilled, my ice is smashed, my cocktail is made. Let's load this baby up. All right, so we've got this really great fresh crushed ice, and you want to put just a little bit more in there than you need, okay? And then sort of make a snow cone out of it, right? And let's pour our mint julep in here. Look at that cool color. So you don't have to use crushed ice if you don't want to, but typically this is something very much like a summertime cocktail. Again, this originates in the South, and so it was hot as you know what, and so people wanted something that was refreshing. Well, that crushed ice is going to dilute it. It's going to make it easier to suck down really well, and also like the mint, the water, the sugar, all those things, it can use a little dilution, right? A little bit more even. So the fact is, like, now the first sip you're going to have all the way to the last sip that you have is going to be a delicious cocktail, even with that extra dilution due to the crushed ice with your Lewis bag. All right, let me give this tin our little rinse out, and I'll show you how to garnish this guy. All right, so let's just grab our mint again and find a pretty sprig. Find a pretty one. I think that's good. Just going to snap off the stem, you know, give it a little bit, and then you kind of gather it like so, and then that stem has a nice little thing to use as you are making your mint sprig down in there, and that is it. That, my friend, is a really super solid, beautiful, easy to make crushed ice mint julep. That's it. I know. How easy is that?
Is this the one that they drink at the Kentucky Derby? Or
This is, yeah, no, that's exactly right. So this was like the official drink of the Kentucky Derby. And if you want to get like uber fancy and like very traditional, then you drink them out of silver or tin mugs. Not like a mule mug, but it's called a julep mug. Yeah.
tin cup kind of thing?
Yeah, but no handle. Right. Yeah. Okay, you got to try it. There we go.
So while you were doing that recipe, Michelle Sands said she would love for us to do a classic Mai Tai recipe sometime.
Ooh, a Mai Tai recipe. That would be great. That would be a lot of fun. I'm down for that. I'll dig up some old fun Mai Tais. What do you think about that?
I've had many mint juleps. I've never had one that had that much flavor. That's
Yeah.
amazing. You know,
Yeah.
It's just like transported me back home. This smells like outside.
Yep.
You know, we had mint in our yard. Wow.
That's again, it takes a little bit of an effort since you're having to muddle some mint. If you are going to make, like, let's say it's Derby Day and you're going to have a Derby party and you want things to be a little bit faster than muddling all of your friends' mint julep, then you're welcome to make a mint simple syrup out of it, and that can speed things up a little bit. And so then you're just sort of adding the mint syrup and the bourbon together, Crushed ice, again, is optional. I love it though. I think it adds that really necessary dilution to such an otherwise pretty strong drink. But again, that's really fun and easy to make, and you can make batches of that, put them in pitchers, leave it in the refrigerator, and then pour it over ice when your guests get there. So again, like something really easy, and it can be done. Like prep would be like, I don't know, it would take you probably 45 minutes to make a simple mint syrup. But at any rate, that's it. That's really easy, okay? Questions, comments, you guys please feel free. We love, again, to have questions or comments. Just type them in, pop them in the comment section below, and we'll get to them as soon as we can, okay? So any questions about so far our two cocktails? Very familiar with the mint julep. The rum sour basically was a lemon daiquiri, so that also is familiar. So for the third recipe, and I think we might be running a little bit long today, but I'm going to squeeze you guys in for one more recipe here. This one I have never made either, so this is called a brandy fix. Okay, and so this is a really interesting one. First, a little bit about brandy. Brandy and cognac. Okay, how about this? All cognac is brandy, but not all brandy is cognac, okay? So if you want to think about it, much the same way that in France, champagne, actually like real champagne, can only come from the Champagne region, is the same thing with cognac. So cognac comes from the Cognac region, which is southwest France, right next to the Champagne region. In fact, there's some of the very similar grapes in that, and there's a very strict set of guidelines for what kind of brandy, how you make the brandy, and if you hit all those guidelines and do it in this very strict, very old, very traditional sort of method, and all the way down to the type of flame you use to light up the still, then if all those things are correct, then you can finally call it cognac. Okay, so if you have brandy, like there's some very delicious brandies that are around. I love cognac. Cognac can get expensive. So for today, we are using nothing too terribly expensive. This is Courvoisier VS, which is kind of an entry-level cognac, very delicious, and this is going to make a great brandy fix. Okay. All right. So now that we have a little tiny lesson about brandy and cognac, let's get moving. All right. So this one is another cocktail that we're going to shake. So let's put that in our shaker, and we are going to use 1.5 ounces of our brandy or cognac. Okay, 1.5 ounces, and I'll show you why. Because we are going to use some chartreuse, green chartreuse. We've talked about this a little bit before when we did the last words on some previous happy hours. And this is, again, one of my favorite things. This comes straight out of Harry Johnson's recipe book. And we are going to use 1/4 ounce of that. Okay, and we can play with this a little bit. And if things have changed so much since 1882 that I like to use these old recipes as a guideline. Now, if you think something needs to be tweaked a little bit, like if we say, oh, wow, this would be great if we just put just a tiny bit more chartreuse in there, then I'm just going to do it, even though the traditional recipe from 1882 says not to. Everything has changed in the world, including spirits. So Courvoisier from 1882 is going to taste different than the one that we are serving today. So don't get too caught up in the exact measurements of things, because if you think it would taste better with a little bit more chartreuse, add a little bit more chartreuse. Okay, so one of the other things that we're going to change here is they asked for, in the recipe book, Harry Johnson's recipe book, they said at this point we were supposed to add pineapple syrup. Okay, so I was not going to go through a huge ordeal to make some pineapple syrup, and I doubt that you guys were as well. So I do have some pineapple juice that we're going to use. Okay, so this is some pineapple juice, and we're going to add half ounce of that. And again, if we taste this and we think it needs a little bit more pineapple juice, then we're going to add a little bit more pineapple juice. But I think a half ounce is a good place to start. And then just a tiny bit of simple syrup. I think this is probably going to be pretty sweet with the chartreuse and the pineapple. So I'm just going to use a little 1/4 ounce of that simple syrup. Okay, and then that is it. So again, let's give this a shake, and then we'll taste it, see how we like it. Okay, back to our testy, our trusty cocktail taster. Wow, that is crazy interesting. Okay, that's really interesting, and I like it. That's really different. The pineapple and the chartreuse are doing something pretty magical there. But I do think that even though we were careful with our sweet elements, I think it did get a little sweet. So I'm going to add another half ounce of this cognac so that we're bringing the recipe total up to 2 ounces of the cognac. So this is going to be one of those cocktails that'll probably sneak up on you, so be careful. Be careful. All right, let's give it another shake to dilute this back down again, get all those flavors nice and mixed in. Okay, let's give it one more taste just to make sure. Ah, way better, way better. Okay. Man, that is really interesting. The chartreuse, now that I put a little bit more cognac in there, the chartreuse now is registering more minty, which man, that is amazing. Okay. Anyway, so let's put this in a Collins glass. So we've got our Collins glass here, and we're going to go back to our Lewis bag, and I still have some ice in there. So I'm going to scoop out some more of this crushed ice.
Crushed ice is not always preferred to cocktails. I know in the julep it's very necessary because that's kind of the whole point.
Exactly. So
is there a rule when not to use crushed ice, which is most of the time?
I think that crushed ice, like the hotter it is outside, the closer you are to wanting crushed ice.
Okay.
How about that for like a simple rule of thumb? Like, think about if you were like, I don't know, in the islands, right? Like you're in like the Bahamas or, somewhere in the Caribbean on an island, and it's 100 degrees outside and you can wring your shirt out. What do you want to do? You want to sip on like a bourbon drink that's like served neat, or are you going to want something like with a little bit of fruit juice in there, a little bit of sweetness, and a ton of ice?
Yes.
Ton of ice, right? So that's.
Ice takes up more volume too, so
Yep.
I feel like if I drink it too fast, I'm leaving the ice behind, but I'm getting that really cold.
That's it. It's going to be super cold, and again, like the dilution in that environment is okay. You know what I mean? Like that to me is completely okay. All right, so we're going to double strain this one into our Collins glass filled with our crushed ice. There we go. And so you can see in here, you can see sort of the color difference. Well, I can see it. I hope you can see it too. So up here you can tell where it's a little bit stronger, and then down here is where it's diluted a little bit from that crushed ice, starting to melt immediately. So if you want to get really particular about this, then you can give it a little stir, and then you can see sort of everything getting back in there and starting to sort of the color is homogenizing a little bit. Okay, so we've got our pineapple in here, we've got our Courvoisier, we've got our green chartreuse, a little bit of simple syrup, our crushed ice. All right, so the recipe called for garnish of any fresh berries or anything that you have on hand. So on hand for me, I've got some fresh orange. So we're going to use some fresh orange and cut a little bit of this fresh orange, if I can, off of there. just a giant wheel, I think is easy, right? And then we're going to tuck this down and make kind of a collar out of that. Put that like so. And then this one, if you want to, you will very rarely see me serve a drink with a straw in it, but this one might be an exception. And that's it. Super simple. And again, if you wanted to put some mint in there, you can put mint in there. A couple berries, if you have blueberries on hand or strawberries, like really whatever you have that's fresh and really beautiful on hand, and that's not going to do anything except for add beauty to it and some nice snacks. Okay, all right, well, this is it. You guys want to try this one?
Yes.
All right, I made a little mess over here.
I'm more excited about this one.
This one is super interesting, and I think you'll see like the flavors that we got out of that are really, really interesting, and nice little, some nice surprises. You know, like the pineapple is subtle, you know, the cognac is in there, but I think that chartreuse, to me, registers a good bit of mint. Right?
Yeah.
What do you think, Al?
I think it's amazing. In my mind, I'm too simple. I would not put those ingredients together and realize you're going to get that kind of complexity.
Yeah.
If I think pineapple, I'm thinking something with some vodka and something just, you know, to smash out at the pool or
Yeah.
the beach. But,
Right.
But this is a very complex flavor. I
Yep.
love it.
The cognac and the chartreuse really are singing and dancing together and making some beautiful art right there. I love that. And that's the first time I've ever made that. That's I think it turned out well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We might see that on the Cool Fish menu.
That's right. That's right. I think we might have found a couple of really fun new cocktails for the Cool Fish menu today. Okay, well, if you guys, again, have any suggestions or questions or comments for me here at the bar or Alex or any of the Cool Fish team, please feel free to type them in and let them leak out into the questions and comments section below, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. You guys, please keep on keeping on, and we will see you guys tomorrow for another edition of Cool Fish Happy Hour. I'm your host, Bob Peters. Thank you very much for stopping by.